loud.
Yep.
All right, so officially from here on out, everything that you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you.
And no member.
Someone's been arrested.
That's why I moved into podcasting. It's a hell of a lot
Listen, we don't
safer.
talk about that.
So, Bryar, you're going to take this one, kick it off. You're going to talk about the toxicity in gaming online in the beginning, in the early days, and then I'm going to talk about more of some experiences from today. So why don't you go ahead and take the floor, sir?
So I'm just going to reference the 360 because, I mean, was my introduction to gaming online was Xbox 360. But I mean, back then, the joke we've got going of I was playing with all of my dads, like, everyone was apparently banging my mom because that's just the whole thing. He's like, I banged your mom. I'm like, all right.
Good for you. She's a hoe.
Proud of you. Take a number.
But she's like, that's everyone. It was people constantly banging your mom. It was people constantly telling you to go kill yourself. It was people constantly, especially if you were female, but like guys and girls both were being told to go make someone else a sandwich. It was just significantly worse if you were a girl.
You were a mouth breather too.
And then you also had a bunch of people who thought they were real cool to play their music ungodly loud behind them, so like you can't hear anything because it's just
they're like
in the
eating
headset.
Nachos, or they're eating just a whole head of lettuce or some shit. It's crazy.
You're constantly yelling at people to turn your mic off because like their mom's beating their little brother in the background and like him screaming is getting real annoying. You're getting a headache. But the early days of it, you had to have thick skin to play the early days of online multiplayer because like that was also the people's first experience into it. Like, okay, now we're online and now I'm anonymous online because back then too, like, you had a little bit more, you were a little more anonymous then than you are now. And you could just say whatever you wanted to whoever you wanted and no one could do anything about it. Like, sure, they could report you, but nothing's going to come of that outside of like maybe a few day ban and you're going to be right back at it again. Well,
and I think in the early days of like PlayStation 3 is really where I started to experience the early online gaming community, and like Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2, and then Battlefield 3. Like Battlefield 3 is probably the shooter that I have the most hours sunk into, but like that online gaming community was just atrocious. Yeah. You get on there and like you would have a couple good players and maybe you kind of sync up and join like fire teams or whatever. But then everybody else was just so vile in the way that they would talk to you and the fact that you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing. And then when there's a point where whoever made Battlefield, I can't remember off the top of my head right now. DICE decided that they were going to do those like noob catch-up patches where you could pay money to level your guy up all the way to somebody who like us who had been playing like day one. And so then you get those people who have money now and they have better gear than you, even though you've been playing longer for them, and they're talking so much shit to you and just really ruining the game experience. Like, come on, man, we're doing capture the flag in a video game. What is your problem? Like, why are you so angry and racist and misogynistic? Like,
everyone was so racist.
What is the problem? Like, I don't understand why you're getting this upset over the video game. I think that was my big thing in the beginning, was just being constantly disappointed in how terrible everybody was.
I remember back in Halo 3 days, there was in my early online multiplayer days, I actually was playing on like friends' consoles because I didn't have a 360 at this point in time. And at some point in time, between like the last time I played and the time I'm playing now, there was a handful of new maps put out for multiplayer in Halo. And I remember one, it was on a hill, right? So you had one team at the bottom, one team at the top. Team at the top had a underground bunker that they can go into, and there was at this one section of the bunker there was a long ass hallway that led damn near straight to the base for whoever's on the bottom of the hill. The only way to open the door there, though, was from up here in the bunker. So, like, ideally, the lower team tried to make their way up, get in the bunker, open the door, so they can just have that quick route in. I'd never played on this map before. I'm just walking past this control panel. I get prompted to open the door. I'm like, sure, what the hell is this? I hit the button. And all of a sudden, the entire team rains in. And, like, essentially, I just screwed us. But I had no idea. I'd never been in this map before. This is the first time. And, like, one guy saw me do it on my team and spent the entire rest of the match telling me how much of a piece of shit I was and why I should just go hang myself. Like, dude, it is a game.
Classic.
Calm down. I didn't know.
Rainbow Six Siege was pretty bad about that too, because it's like anything with like a really small, tight team has like the most ridiculous. And like if you jump into a match with 2 or 3 other people that know each other, like you're on your own, man. Like there's no support for you. Like one of the guys that on that Facebook thing that I read, you got to like know how to talk shit if you're going to play online. Like you got to have thick skin. You got to come correct because those people are just ruthless to you.
Yeah. And the early advanced warfighters were the same way too. That era, just like, oof.
Dude, early Call of Duty in general.
Yep.
Yeah, early Call of Duty and early Halo were some of the worst. And again, it was all kids who still have that high-pitched cracking voice, and they're like 10, 12 years old tops telling you, first of all, just throwing some of like the worst racial slurs I don't even hear grown adults saying half the things these kids are saying.
Yeah, I think
and the only reason they're saying it is because their mom's in their room and can't hear them.
There's an ESRB rating for a reason, because a lot of people decided that like kids can't handle this shit. They can't handle losing at it. They can't handle playing it. They can't handle talking about it. But then parents just don't care about the games anyway, and then we have to deal with all that bullshit online. So not that it's just young kids, but I think predominantly the issue is probably with the younger generation of gamers, I think.
And to go along with that, it's the parents who aren't monitoring what their kids are doing online.
Yeah,
like I'm not saying breathe down your kid's neck 24/7, but every once in a while, maybe just take a quick peek, pop in for a little bit, kind of see what they're doing. Just keep tabs on what your kid's doing.
It's a twofold issue too, because as we're getting older, and we were kids, we were kids when we were playing this. Let's face it, that was 10+ years ago.
Speak for years. I was a teenager.
I mean, technically, I was a young adult, but we were still kids. It's a twofold issue too, and I've seen it working in retail like that. A lot of these parents nowadays, they're getting younger, and they're letting these consoles raise their kids to a certain extent. So you get that mentality out there where these kids get to do that because they may have seen their parents do that, or the opposite hand, the side of that coin is they're doing that because their parents have not taught them like what these words actually mean. Like, yeah, you could say it sound cool to your friends, but you start dropping some of these slurs in 2020 that have shown to affect like people across the spectrum, and then anonymity's there. Like, it's just a shit show because like these consoles were not designed to raise your kids.
That's a really good point about like watching your parent do something and then you and monkey see monkey do is a big part of parenting. So making sure that I'm very specific on manners in my household, how we treat people, how we treat staff if we're at a restaurant, how we talk to people, how we open doors and stuff like that. That's very important to me to relate to my family. Now, if my daughter was watching me lose my shits because I'm trying to play Avengers and somebody's not pulling their weight, that's on me as a dad because my daughter saw me do that because, oh, well, daddy did it. Why wouldn't I do that as well? That shit's on me. I think that's a really, really good point because whereas my gaming dungeon is in the basement, Bryar's in the Mantic, you guys are in an attic as well. There's some separation there between where your kid primarily is versus where the game is. I think a lot of households probably have the gaming system in the living room and they're playing, when the kids are awake and doing homework, whatever. And there's a lot of that shit that's just transferred even without them really knowing. And then you have a kid who's now emboldened, like, I just heard my dad fucking destroy this person online. Let's get into Grand Theft Auto 5 because I have it. And let's see if we can just see how that works.
I learned some new words. Let's get online.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I remember being a kid and practicing swear words. I would round the corner of the block. And then I remember saying like, fucking goddamn it for the first time because I'd heard it and I wanted to try it. Those are new, big, powerful words. Let's take them for a spin.
I just witnessed
we're building
two kids
that
doing
online.
that.
What?
Using new words that they just learned. So like, again, I work from home now too. So my work desk and my gaming desk are the same. And I have a window right here that I can see out into the street on. Thursday or Friday. I can't remember which one. Right after school let out, I live like 2 blocks away from an elementary school. 3 kids rode by on their bikes. And you can tell they just learned how to swear because they are sprinkling fuck into their sentence a ridiculous amount of times. Yes. Like I watched one kid, I heard one kid yell at his other one. I don't even remember how it went. It was just, effing this, effing that, you MFer, effing. I'm like, whoa, slow down there, sport. I understand you just learned this word, but it's a little overkill.
Let it breathe, man. Let it breathe.
Let it breathe.
Just pepper it in just a little bit. Lightly season your sentences.
And I think that's part of the problem too, is like kids learn these words and like now they have an online space where they can say these words and they can sound cool because I don't know, mom and dad sound pretty cool when they say it. So like,
it's a good point.
Like my kid's 2.5, almost 3. So like we're really having to watch what we say around him because he repeats everything. So it's constantly censoring yourself because, kids grow up younger, hearing these fancy words, as I'm going to call them. It's just.
We raised our niece from 1 to about 7. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. I'm surprised she didn't learn some stuff from me.
Well, she did. But it's just, it amazed me because we had to start making better choices, even to the extent of what games we were playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
When she was in the house, like human on human violence or action of any sort, we had to start being more aware of that, because even though she was living upstairs with grandma at the time, we were downstairs, a quick bypass of even just a little clip of audio is so formative during those years, and it's terrifying what we're considering normal in video games, movies, books. And I'm not saying like don't teach your kids this, have conversations about it. That's where these issues, in my opinion, we're going to get to this at the end, but that's where these issues come from, is because we're not having open dialogue about it.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, don't say
and
that.
Like, and awareness. Like I think Bryar said it, or one of you guys have said about like just being on top of like what your kid is doing. When the beta was out for Marvel Avengers, I let my 6-year-old, so you play through 8A and at the end of it, you fight Taskmaster as Black Widow. I had to go do something upstairs. So I just left the controller on the couch and my daughter's like, can I play? I'm like, absolutely. So my daughter ended up beating Taskmaster at the end of the beta. After that, she started having nightmares about Taskmaster because I never put it together that, here's this guy and he's got this dorky cape and he's got this stupid ass mask and I'm going to beat the shit out of him because he's trying to be like Captain America and all these other people. In my head, there's nothing scary about this animated character. To my daughter, who had never seen a villain like that before and knows that Black Widow is just trying to stop him, that was really maybe not traumatic, but like enough of an impact to where it gave her nightmares for a couple of days. And so she's not allowed to watch me play that game anymore. That's a thing that I had to learn. Lego, Infinity, Lego Incredibles, Lego Harry Potter, Disney Infinity, all those things, like those are safe games for her little 6-year-old brain because she's not mature enough to handle the heavier shit. And I think it was really a lesson for me to just really up my awareness of like, all right, just because it's nothing to you doesn't mean it's not nothing to her. Let's really pay attention to what we're doing. What are these games like? What's in these? What are they talking about? Because it's not worth it to have her not sleep well and wake up the next morning and say, Daddy, I had another nightmare. Like that's a shitty feeling as a dad. And I don't want to have that experience again. That's on me.
So I got two things real quick. I'm sorry on that. One, I remember when you told me about how she beat Taskmaster and I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. 2, to go along with that, like it's nothing to us, but it's something to them. So my kids rarely ever allowed up here. It's only for like very specific things and very infrequently. There was one time he came upstairs, he just woke up from his nap and I was trying to wrap something up I was doing on the game, so my wife went down to get him and she brought him upstairs because he wanted to come upstairs where Daddy is. So he's sitting on the couch next to me and I'm playing Assassin's Creed and I was in a mission where I had to sink a handful of other enemy ships and he's watching me just sail around and he's loving it. And at one point, like I gave him the controller just so he could sail my ship around and whatnot, but then I had to take these out and like at one point I without thinking boarded an enemy ship and just started cutting guys down. And like he kind of was like, what? So, like my wife then started to explain to him and then like it clicked to me like shit, he's watching me straight up cut a dude.
Yeah,
so, like
murdering
had to pause
guy
it.
after guy.
And again, he's 2, but I now have to have a conversation with my son about how first of all it's not real, it's a game. Second of all, we don't actually do this in real life. This is a big no-no. Like it was nothing to me because I understand with my adult brain, loosely referring to it as an adult brain, I understand that this is just a video game and this does not reflect real life, or at least it should not reflect real life. But to him, he doesn't understand it. He just sees something happening. And now I have to have this not fun conversation because it's something to him.
Yeah. It's hardcore, man.
And their brains are, and I think children's brains are actually some of the coolest thought processes ever because what is fiction is reality and what is reality is fiction to them. They can't tell between the two. So they get to experience games in a richer way that we do, but at the same time, it's a lot more detrimental than what we do.
Absolutely.
But then again, I don't have kids. I'm not a psychologist. This is just from
it's your experience. You know, the games that they're playing look more realistic. The things that are happening, the sounds that they're hearing, the squish of somebody who's stabbing somebody else, like that shit is so. A team of sound engineers are focusing on making that as visceral as possible because they want you to be immersed as an adult gamer who's able to handle it. And then you put that headset on a kid and they're just not ready for that shit. It's just crazy.
Yeah. It's that same gap from when we were playing Mario as kids to the first time we ripped somebody's spine out in Mortal Kombat.
Exactly. I was literally going to say that. So you see Mario fall into that little gap, and that's one thing. You jump off of Yoshi plummets to his death, and you don't give it another thought because you needed to clear the gap. But then you see fucking Goro uppercut somebody's head off, and then you hold the spine proudly above your head. You're like, what the fuck is this game? It's a completely different experience as a gamer.
I have to say, my first experience with the terrifying aspect of games was I was way too young and my dad didn't read labels, go figure, and it was Resident Evil Code Veronica, and I couldn't get past the opening scene because it fucked me up. Like, just that guy's changing into a zombie while he's driving a truck. And my little, I think I was like 8 at the time, my little 8-year-old brain couldn't figure it out. Like, that's not real. I
was like 6 and I saw my brother playing Ninja Gaiden on like NES. And there was something about the color palette of it and the songs that they were using that it was a scary game to me. And then you grow up and you look at the graphics, you're like, what the fuck? But like as a kid, there was just something about it that just really kind of creeped me out, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But like, there's no way that Ninja Gaiden was like built for a kid to play. Like, there's no way. Like, that was more for an adult audience. It just had lower 60-bit graphics or whatever. But
we're seeing more and more kids jump into these games that are way too mature for their brains. And that's where I think this, and sometimes I wonder if some of these adults didn't never grow up past 12 years old with the comments I've gotten. Yeah. It's like, how much of that is because they didn't have to? They were stunted in the way they talked with their buddies.
Right. And everybody else is constantly talking about that. So all the women, they're like, send me nudes, or do you want me to rate your boobs or whatever? Like, how fucking old are you? And like, what if that person is in his 20s and like legitimately they just grew up constantly trying to rate and get nudes from people online? So that's just what they think gaming is. It's nothing other than that. Like, that's crazy and unfortunate. So
I fully believe that no one leaves the high school mentality. So pretty much.
You are not wrong on that. You aren't, especially when you get into like small town aspects of it. And I'm not saying this as like as a statistic, but like in the position I was put in as a kid, I had to grow up very quickly. I was on my own at 15. So I already had, like, not to toot my own horn, but I had the mentality of a 25-year-old by the time I was 15 because I had to, versus I see other people my age and they're still stuck in like that 13, 14 mentality, and they get to be that way. And it's like, no, you need to grow up, guys.
Yeah, man. Gaming can be a great thing, but can also be a terrible thing. Yeah. Just depends on how it's handled.
It's helped me grow as a person in more ways than one, just in opening up the dialogues of race, transgender. I mean, look at what The Last of Us Part 2 has done alone for opening up dialogues.
Oh, yeah. So many conversations based around that game, good, bad, or otherwise, but like conversations that never would have happened if that game didn't exist. And that's a good thing, because that was a game that was a benchmark that helped push it forward, and like that's a good thing. Yep. So let's zoom forward. So we were talking about gaming in the old days, 360, PlayStation 3 back in the day, and then let's kind of zoom forward to today. So PlayStation 4, Xbox One, the Switch, and beyond. How has the gaming culture evolved from what it was to what it is versus where we think it's going to be going in the future? Right now, like playing games like Rocket League, like I said earlier, games like the Avengers, that culture, that mentality is still there. There's still, it's you do something wrong, and instead of just saying, hey, I don't know if you know what you're doing, or can I help you do what's right to bring you up, it's, you know what, let me flame you and let me push you down. To me, even right now in the gaming hemisphere, that is as prevalent as it's ever been. What do you guys think about that, as far as what you've seen, what you've heard, as far as gaming today?
It hasn't changed. On one hand, like it hasn't changed. On the other, it's gotten more, don't want to say necessarily vulgar, but it's gotten maybe more personal. and maybe it's been the last few years with the spotlight being shown on the fact that it is not, you know, I hate to say it, but it's not white America anymore. It is the United States. We've got everybody under the sun living in this place. And we've been shown that we need to grow up. And the mentality of we just want it to stay the same, including our video games, is keeping us so stuck in the past and some of that aspect of it that until we get some kind of system set up where we're going to hold these people accountable, because it's not, let's face it, it's not the majority of gamers by any stretch of the imagination. Right. It is just a very vocal minority.
Right.
And until we get something to either teach them and educate them that the world doesn't need to revolve around them, and that what they do typing away at their screens or on their, you know, on their phones, they may not necessarily think it is hurting somebody, but it will. Like, there's another person on the other end of that.
Yeah.
And until we get some way to do that, I don't necessarily know if it's going to change. I hope it does, but I just don't know if it can until we as gamers stand up enough and say, hey, look, you guys need to go sit in the fucking corner until we can deal with you.
And I agree. I think, I mean, we'll get into this in the fix it section, but like, if I'm with a person on Rocket League and they're just being an asshole, I'll just write toxic, and I'll just write that one word. That's all I'll say the entire time. What I've noticed is if I say that, usually it'll dial the other person back, or it'll trigger that person. They'll go nuts. There is no in between. It's either like they'll completely back off being whatever. Sometimes they'll even apologize, and then other times they'll just go fucking balls to the wall, and it's just insane. But it's interesting because, like you had said, like it's becoming more specific. So like now, the last time I got into it with a person online in Rocket League again, they had called me an inward virgin over and over and over. And I'm like, I'm a white guy and I have 2 kids. What the fuck are you talking about? But they couldn't get off of that. That was it. No matter what happened each time, you know, like Rocket League is a 5-minute match, but it can take, 10 minutes depending on stops and stuff like that. But throughout the entirety of that match, over and over, like inward version, over and over and over again. I'm like, what happened to you that's your thing? That's the only thing that you can hone in on. And there is no logic to it. There was no sense of it. There was no accuracy to it. I'm just sitting there just confused and reading over and over as this guy just flips out. And it was really frustrating. It had nothing to do with the game of just us playing Rocket League. And so, like we were saying before, it hasn't got better. I don't know that it's gotten worse, but it's definitely gotten a lot more specific about the people. And maybe it's like, economy of words. Before, you could just say, hey, you suck, and that was bad. Now, you listen to the radio, what's played on the radio today is not at all what was played on the radio back in the late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s. And maybe the dialogue online is following suit. The more they hear online, the more they feel comfortable saying online. The more they see in the real world, the more they feel comfortable saying shit like that in the real world. And maybe it's just a natural evolution of this toxicity in gaming.
Yeah, I would say too, I think a lot of it does still stem from like what games you are playing, is their specific online community. So I took a break from Final Fantasy 14 for a while, and now I'm getting back into it. And like I've had a pretty even split between like toxic players and actually like legit helpful players in that one. And I think honestly that's one of the few games I've had an even split versus, just everyone wants to tell you what a piece of shit you are and why you should kill yourself. Whereas like, don't get me wrong, like, so I in that game I main a healer. So like if I screw up, I can cause the entire party to wipe very easily. I've done it intentionally and on accident multiple times. But like, the game's pretty good too. Like if you're going into a dungeon for the first time, it'll throw that in the chat when it starts. Like, hey, it doesn't tell you who it is, but it just tells you there's a first timer in your group.
Oh, nice.
And that does give you the opportunity, like, hey, does anyone need this explained to you? Do you need help?
So I would appreciate that, because a big part of me and Bryar's gaming experience is Bryar teaching me what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. Because I just don't pay attention. Half the time I'm zoned out. I'm not really reading. There's a lot of dialogue and I'm just on my phone or whatever. And so same thing about load screens. I bought this game to play, not to listen to a ton of exposition and all this other shit, whatever. So like, that would be helpful for me to have a little icon that said, hey, this is a first timer. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. I'd be okay with that. That wouldn't offend me.
And like
Yeah.
a lot of times, like if I'm first time in there, a lot of times too, I'll even ask someone like, "Hey, can anyone give me a very quick rundown just so I, know what I'm doing real quick?" And a lot of times people are like, "Yeah, no problem," and they'll sit there for a couple minutes and type it all out for you real quick, like, "Hey, at this point we're gonna do this. At this boss fight, you need to watch out for this, etc., etc." And then sometimes you just people who won't talk to you at all. Like you'll ask, like, "Hey, is there anything I need to know for this?" They'll just ignore you and run straight in, and then they get super mad when you guys wipe. Like, well, I asked for help. You non-verbally told me to go fuck myself. So here we are.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will say in that game, and again, like I'm sure I'm a very limited. I don't know how I want to word it. I'm sure I'm just looking at like a very small percentage of the people playing that game, but for the most part, like to me, anyways, it seems like that's one of the ones that like if you ask for help, people are more willing to help you in that one. Just from my personal experience. But then at the same time, like you can ask for help till you're blue in the face. People still flame you for screwing up the smallest detail. Like last night, now getting back into it, I have a lot of stuff I need to get caught up on. And one of them was I needed to clear one of the new 24-man raids. So it's 3 teams of 8 people. And if one team screws up, it can screw it up for everyone else. So my buddy Bob was playing with me, and he was trying to walk me through it. But like he had been a while since he'd done this one, so he messed up a couple of calls. I died a lot, but the rest of my group kind of picked up the slack and like helped me through, and it was great.
Cool.
But at the same time, they could have easily just verbally destroyed me and told me why all the reasons I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So, like,
Which there are so many.
There are full multi-volume encyclopedia versions of why I am a piece of shit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, all that to say, I do think a lot of the online toxicity in gaming is still very much there. It is still very prevalent, but I do think it falls into a lot of game-specific sections. Like Call of Duty, there's always going to be people telling you why you are the worst person in the world, why you should kill yourself. And a lot of MMOs and all that stuff, same thing, but there are the handful of games out there where the community is at least not a bunch of assholes. They are more willing to help you out and not treat you like shit. It's just hard to find them.
Yeah. What about you, Jet and Sammy?
So I've been very fortunate. My first experience with online gaming was either Diablo 3
Nice.
or Destiny.
Diablo 3 is like
Destiny.
the game I would sell to couples when they wanted to play something together. I was like,
Yeah.
you need to get either Diablo 3 or like a Lego game or like Rayman, and you guys have yourself.
Lego games are life.
Yeah, man.
I love Lego games. But those communities are very based around, because like the people that are playing with you have these communities that are they're not toxic in the sense of like, yeah, you're going to get mad at your team players. Like that's just a thing. And you're going to talk smack. But I've been very, very spoiled in the sense of I've never hopped on like the original CODs because I don't want to be treated that way. Nor do they want to hear what I have to say because I will come unglued. It's a problem. So I've always made sure that I've joined communities that are not necessarily positive, but at least are productive.
Yeah, so the lady earlier, Ray, she was talking about how she'd shared off some cosplay and she was just trying to be cool, whatever, and everybody started going nuts on her. She'd been toying with the idea of just starting her own female-only gaming community, not because she's trying to isolate boys, but because she's just so sick of constantly dealing with men and boys and shit like that in general, which I totally understood. And like I told him, like, hey man, it's only like 11:45 on a Saturday night. Grab you a drink and get after it. Like, go make it. Like,
do it.
Make your
We
safe
need
spot.
more of it.
Absolutely. And if you know that's where you can go and you can actually be a gamer and be treated as a gamer and not have to worry about all the other bullshit that guys unfortunately bring to the table, like, then go for that. That it sucks that has to happen, but you can do that. What I wonder is if they're going to do more interfacing like that on the PlayStation 5, where if you know you're a female or if you know you're a young person, maybe you can kind of safely get into these other ecosystems with people and then play games together. So you don't have to be shoved into, Warzone with a bunch of other assholes that are 13 to 25 and have no censor and are just completely ridiculous, just to help kind of keep people safer from that.
What they would be cool to see too is again, I'm going to reference Final Fantasy 14 is they have a blacklist on there, which is that anytime you're playing with someone who's like hella toxic, or you get a lot of people create bots to spam a way to sell the in-game currency. It's a whole thing. It's super annoying. But you can right-click that person's username and add them to your blacklist. So you don't see them, you don't hear from them. They're
that's
dead
awesome.
to you.
I love that.
Mine's full.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
I need that in my real life.
Yeah.
Mine on Final Fantasy is full, and it's a pretty even split between people who are just so painfully toxic that I never want to be in a dungeon or never want to see them again. I never want to be in a position where I have to play a game with them again. And then also the bots who are just spamming you to buy the in-game currency. But like even having something like that more commonly put into games would be super helpful. And then like to follow up with that, game developers and everything, maybe keep an eye. So like, okay, let's say, Devon's being an asshole and I add him to my blacklist. Maybe there's like a flag on his account. Don't act like that. You're a dick. But maybe like his account gets flagged on, the developer's end. So it's just something they see. Nice. Smart move. But, and like if this person is constantly being flagged for this and is like, on 100 different people's blacklist, maybe they look into it. Maybe that's how they start to target toxic players. Like, hey, everyone said you're a piece of shit. Maybe that person gets watched a little bit more closely.
Can we agree that game developers are more keen on going after cheaters than toxic gamers?
100%.
Yes.
And maybe that's a huge fucking thing that I just kind of thought of because I don't even remember what game it was. I think it was some Call of Duty maybe. They just talked about some crazy amount of gamers that were just banned for cheating in whatever game that was. And I remember thinking like, all right, so they've got metrics in place to talk about cheaters and stuff, but like as far as the toxic people who are treating the other gamers like garbage, it just doesn't seem to be as big of an issue.
I can't remember what game it is too, but they have something set up where if you're being reported as cheating or you get caught cheating, they will actually restrict you to basically a cheaters only server. So now you're just playing with other people who are cheating,
Which is a
kind of
great
separate
idea. I
you from
love
the
that.
general population.
There's
That's
been,
awesome.
I think Siege did it.
No,
There's been a
Yeah.
few of the major new ones that have come out that have done it. Fall
Yeah.
Guys did it for a while.
Oh, I
Do
love
something
Fall
like that.
Guys.
yeah, Fall Guys is
It's a good time.
that's all toxic gamers, man. Just fucking bunch of
It's
man.
just me constantly holding
The fact
Devon
that
so he
people
can't do
cheat.
anything.
Yeah, so you can't.
But do
anyway.
something like that for toxic players too. If people keep getting flagged as toxic,
Yeah,
put them in a
there.
toxic
Have
only
your own
server.
toxic community. I love that.
Yeah,
That's great.
That'd be a good one.
That way
Because
too.
they obviously thrive off of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so now they can still play your game, so you're still getting the money out of them, but now they're not interacting with the people who just want to chill after work and play a game. They're not looking to have someone tell them to go blow their brains out because they didn't contribute as well as you thought they should have to the match.
So what about you, Jet, before we move on to the how do we fix it section? Recently, the last couple of games that you played, how's the online culture look? Is it as toxic as it was back in the old days? Has it gotten any better for you?
Oh, it's definitely as toxic. Like I said, I think it's gotten more narrowed down. Like you said, like it used to be, you'd call them. Yeah, I don't know how PG you want to keep this, but you drop cocksucker and stuff like that. You go to town. Like it's not necessarily hurting anybody's feelings, but you're getting your point across.
Right.
And now you start dropping racial obscenities. You start telling them to kill themselves.
That you're going to come and kill
harassing.
them? Yeah.
Yeah, or to kill them, and that's where that line gets crossed, and it's unfortunate. Like even me, like I've played most of these CODs online since they've come out. Like I have to do private chat anymore, or like a party chat, just because like I know that at least if my buddy says, hey, you fucked up, it's a constructive criticism at least. Like
Right.
yeah, they may be writing me about it, but at least I'm not going to hear go fuck off and die afterwards. Like
And like
it's not that-
PlayStation,
it's-
the party chat is so much cleaner and louder than the in-game chat engine anyway.
yeah.
So it's like I'll have a better audio experience and talk to the people that I know if I use party chat. If I go into in-game chat, it won't sound as good, and all these assholes are there. So why?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Does
Yeah.
it? And this may be a stupid question, but do you think it boils down to like the game and the toxic community? Because we keep going back to COD. So like, is COD like the breeding ground for the toxic community then?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think
COD's
there's a lot of them on COD, but there's a lot of them on Final Fantasy. There's a lot of them on Rocket League. There's a lot of them, I'm sure, on Fall Guys and shit. I mean, I think toxicity is kind of an innate issue with the gaming space in general. but I think you might have bigger pockets on like the Grand Theft Autos and the Call of Duties and stuff, because there's like free to play, like Fortnite. I don't really fuck with, but I would imagine it's probably a wasteland of toxicity because it's free. Kids don't have to pay for that; they can jump right in.
And they used to be able to download it on their phones, and it was super easy.
Right. And so, Fall Guys was free for PlayStation Plus users, so I'm sure there's a bunch of people that have that for that reason. I got Rocket League when it was a PlayStation Plus exclusive years ago. And so, you have, I think, these little pockets of people who just kind of jump in for free, and then they're monsters. But then I think you also have the competitive space of people that can't handle competition or don't understand sports ethics or good sportsmanship, that just don't understand what it's like to just lose and just say, hey, man, that was a great match. You guys kicked our asses and it sucked that we got stomped, but like there's never that. It just it doesn't exist
What
anymore.
I hate too is like the people who like the toxic players who are trying to shit on you for playing the game wrong, and then you look at it and realize that they're fucking up more so. Like, once again, I'm going to reference Final Fantasy. This was like an expansion or two ago. I was in a run, and again, I'm healing. In that game, they have class specific gear that will benefit you, and like you can throw on another class's gear, but it actually does more harm than good. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. It's like going to make you play shittier. So like I remember I was healing for one. It's me and my buddy Bob, and one of the DPS characters was wearing half of his gear was all healer gear. So he was going in at a disadvantage anyways because his stats were halved because of the gear he was wearing. And yet he just spent 10 minutes shitting on me because I missed a heal and it caused us to wipe on the first boss. I'm like, yeah, I fucked up, but you're in here, you were fucking up even more so because like nothing you're doing is actually benefiting us. Because now, like, your damage output is nowhere near where it should be. So now all the boss fights are taking twice as long because you're not carrying your weight. I had one slip up. Yeah, I'll acknowledge that I screwed up. I'll do better next time, champ. But, like, don't come at me flagging me for doing this wrong when you are being so shitty about it and doing it so piss poorly that, honestly, arguably, this fuck-up could have actually been caused by you.
Yeah.
And, like, I've seen that a lot, too. Just not even in just Final Fantasy. Like, people who have no idea what they're doing, flaming you for one screw up when in all reality, like they're the reason you've lost the match or whatever. And it's just own up to the fact you're fucking up and quit making me feel like shit for one simple mistake.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
There's no grace in gaming, that is for sure.
No.
And you're never going to be perfect at it all the time.
Yeah, you have your good days and your bad days. I have games in Rocket League where I'm like the best player I've ever seen, and then I have games where I'm like, did I just fucking buy this? Like, what is happening? And
Yeah.
you can't explain that to somebody online. Online, all they see is like the teammate sucks or the teammate is amazing and is carrying me, and there is no grace in between, and that sucks.